I will say is this.
All I can do is focus on where the love is for me, where the friends are for me, where the people who want to understand me. I can say that this season there are some people who feel like they are set on not understanding me because of certain alliances. I do feel like there are people who might have been colored against wanting to truly get to know me. And I can tell that because if I'm coming open-armed and, authentic and apologetic or honest or loving, how could you not want to understand that? How could you not accept that? But for a couple people, it's not being accepted, and that's cool. It is what it is.
One of the things that happened in a recent episode that I would like to get you to clear the air on was the conversation about that K. Michelle had, the miscarriage comment.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw the comments. It seemed to be pretty split, whether or not you intentionally meant it to harm her or it was just something that, you said off the top of your dome. You are somebody who is an ambassador for the March of Dimes. You are somebody, again, going back to season 6, where you talked about having a miscarriage, right? And you cried about the fact that you were there for a week and Cordell didn't only showed up one time.
Right.
Like, this is something that you have, dealt with.
Right.
What would you like to say? Because K. Michelle did do tweets even after the episode aired, where we saw the episode end and it seemed like y'all hugged it out, everything is good.
Yeah.
But then the tweets started to happen afterwards where she sort of is doubling down on she doesn't trust you. What do you have to say about that?
I think that's another situation where someone has decided that this is the route they need to take. I don't think this is the route that K. Michelle needs to take or has to take. I think it's the wrong road. But at the end of the day, if you have been watching the show and then you are finally on the show, you decide this is how you're going to enter, this is how I'll make my mark, then it is what it is. This is the game she decides to play. And I only say that because whether or not, and I will say, when I said it to her, I had first asked her, was it okay? Did she want to openly speak about her situation? Number 2, the reason why I asked her, did she want to speak about it on camera, is because I didn't know specifically what it was. No one told us. Even when I texted K. Michelle prior to that scene at the nail shop, I was like, hey, you in the hospital? Are you okay? She said, oh yeah, I had to have a procedure or whatever. She never told me what it was for. So I had no idea which part of her was, a problem. I had no idea. So, of course, as a woman, I know we making TV. It is what it is. I'm not going to just sit here and start asking her about what she was in the hospital for, what procedure, if she's not ready. So I wanted to first say, hey, are you good talking about it? Because at the end of the day, I don't care if this is our job to speak about personal stuff or not. I don't care if she talks about it in a scene with her doctor on camera or not. If I then need to pivot the conversation away from specifics, I'm going to do that. But she said, yeah, I'm okay, yeah. And she proceeded to tell us what was going on. Unfortunately, she was burying the lead. I mean, she went on to the story for a while before she even mentioned it was her bottom. During that time, we're standing there and I'm like, oh, what she was describing mirrored what I had been through. You're sitting there in a pool of fluid. Same thing had happened to me prior to having Pilar. Pilar's my rainbow baby. But I had a miscarriage at home by myself, woke up, same thing. So I was like, oh, so it came to mind, was it a miscarriage? Right after that, she giggled and said, girl, I thought the same thing. We moved on with the conversation. She continued to describe more fluid that did not have blood. Cynthia then said, like your water broke? We're women. All of us are in a trusted space. We all have uteruses, vaginas, and we're talking about things that we all have been through. We're all trying to relate to her for her to open up and, talk about what she's got going on. So in that moment, I didn't feel anything. I didn't, think that anything had offended her. It wasn't until I met with her at the lunch table and she was like, oh, what's when you said miscarriage? I was taken back, like, oh my God, how could you think that I would, try to offend you or, call you out or even, oh my God, make fun of you about a miscarriage? And I could have gone all like, well, how could you think? But I said, you know what? Respect how she feels. Whether she thinks I meant it, whether I did not mean it, whatever my intentions were, this is how she feels. So in that moment, I said to her, I apologize. Forget my excuse of, oh, I have been through before, because none of that fucking matters. If you genuinely feel like what I said offended you, okay, I hear you. And I'll never do that again. I'll be careful and make sure that I temper or wait till you go ahead and say what was going on. So in that moment, I felt like we handled that conversation very adult, very mature. And I remember telling her at that lunch table, I said to her, I said, what I want to do with you, I want to show you how I friend. And I'm not saying that I friend better than her, but I wanted to give her a different experience in Atlanta because she had cried to me about being in Atlanta and having a friendship group, which was from Love and Hip Hop, and they treated her wrong and they ran out of here and they were so unfair to her. And I told her that day she told me that story, and I told her that day at that lunch table, I said, I know what you've been through, and I know what triggers you have. I know you could be sensitive. I said, I want you to know I'm not that girl. And the people who I have around you, Cynthia and Phaedra, we're not those girls. I am the type of person, I want to protect my friend. I want to be there for you. And I'm genuine. So I told her, I'm going to show you how I friend. And the way we're having this conversation right now, I appreciate you coming to me. Let's talk about it. I also want to talk to you. Now, at the time, I had no idea she had done a whole scene with Pinky and a scene with Cynthia calling me dumb and a this and a that. I was like, oh, goodness.
When you watched it for the first time, how did it make you feel?
So when I watched K. Michelle when I watched Michelle, her punishment was too hard for what she called the crime, I said, okay. I picked up my phone and I texted her, because that's how I am. Ask Candy, ask anybody, ask Sheree. If you do, I'm gonna text right away as I'm watching the show. And I said, hey, I just want you to know, I'm watching a show and I see that you still didn't feel, or you were still upset with, me speaking to you about the situation. I said, I want you to know I am sincere and that I never would have wanted to offend you about that. When I spoke with Shamia, she never told me any detail. You never told me anything of a detail of your bottom. I never would have done that, and I just want you to know from my heart, even though I saw her call me all them names, I was like, fuck all that. Let me make her as a woman understand that at the root of it, I never would have made fun of you. She said, okay, I truly appreciate that, etc. And, I appreciate you reiterating that you didn't know or blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, cool. Put the phone down, we were done. Oh my God, the next day, she's tweeting saying, oh, well, what if you was to die? And what is you doubling down? And I was like, okay, I see what I'm dealing with. And listen, I don't want to go too hard on K. Michelle. I'll just say this. In general, as a person, in any space, you could be at work, it could be a family member, it could be a friend. If you are in any group and you are talking to somebody and they don't have a heart to understand you, they don't want to understand you, it could be for whatever reason, ratings or want to be right or just want to see you as wrong, they're never going to understand. They're never going to actually say out loud, oh, I understand, because they're too busy trying to do something else, whatever that else may be. So I said, okay, cool. So at this point, I know what else happens in the season. And although she's funny and she's adorable, I don't know how it's going to go over. I don't think that what was happening with her and Drew is going to go over as well as maybe she thinks it will. I don't. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think that when she looks back at this first season, she'll probably be like, oh, I probably chose the wrong team.